state of New Hampshire, looks like the legislature there is poised to fully decriminalize, legalize, like as in Colorado and Washington State, pot, marijuana, although the governor of that state has said that a Democrat, has said that she will veto that if it is passed. This is very interesting. And Colorado seems to be, starting to rake in some cash on this thing. Washington State hasn't yet figured out their regulatory scheme, but they're working on it. But it's a debate that is being engaged. In fact, yesterday or the day before yesterday, perhaps, here in Washington, D.C., the city council passed out of committee to the council as a whole a resolution to essentially decriminalize marijuana, at least possession of less than an ounce here in the district, make it a $25 parking ticket, basically. No criminal record, no arrest kind of thing. So what's the story here? What direction is this country going? What's the arc of history? What are the politics of this? And what about the policy of this? Charles Cully Stimson, the manager of National Security Law Program and a senior legal fellow with the Heritage Foundation, is on the line with us. Heritage.org, of course, is their website. Cully, welcome to the program.
Tom, thanks for having me back again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us. So tell me why you think that pot should not be decriminalized like they've done in Colorado, for example.
Mm-hmm. Well, I come at this from the perspective of seeing people in drug treatment programs, in drug court as a criminal defense attorney and a prosecutor and as a judge. So I've been on all three sides of the courtroom, luckily not the defendant side yet. I've read the research, I read the studies. I just think, Tom, that some of the myths that are out there are just wrong based on my reading of the research. Like the fact that people suggest that marijuana is harmless. I think the studies are rather clear that they're not harmless. There are negative social consequences, that marijuana is not addictive. I think there are a lot of studies that suggest and support the fact that it can be addictive.
Or at least habit forming. What percentage of Americans, though, compare pot to alcohol. Is alcohol not, we got 50,000 Americans a year who die just from, basically liver failure from alcohol.
Yeah, and a lot of us have had alcoholics in our families, me included, and it's a horrible, horrible condition.
And if those people were pot addicts, they would not die of cirrhosis of the liver. Nobody has ever died from an overdose of marijuana. Nobody has ever died from chronic use of marijuana. Ever, literally.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's even provable.
If you could name one person who's ever died from too much pot, I'll take it back.
Yeah. Well,
I'm guessing if there was such a person, we'd all know his name.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I don't do politics on this. I do policy on it. And my looking at the research here shows that, for example, the body is predisposed to being able to dispose of or excrete alcohol in a way that's much easier, for example, than a regular use of marijuana.
Well, it's much more rapid. Pot is fat soluble, so it stays in our body for up to a month. Alcohol is not fat soluble. Actually, it'll dissolve fat. It's the other way around.
Yeah.
But it is rapidly metabolized by the liver. Pot is more slowly metabolized. But that doesn't speak to toxicity. That speaks to persistence. Yeah.
Well, look, the pot that we all watched on the silver screen in the Cheech and Chong movies, that in the 70s, the THC level, as you well know, was about 1%, maybe slightly more. The pot today, as you also know, the THC level can be as high as 30%.
No, I didn't know that.
We're talking about
that's pretty astounding.
We're talking. You're getting more bang for your buck.
Right.
One, and the fact that the active ingredient THC in pot is so high today, from anywhere from 6% up to 30%, it really is a different type of.
But Scully, I can tell you as somebody who, it's been a lot of years, and especially being in the public eye, I've over the years on a couple of occasions I've socially imbibed, shall we say, before I started doing a radio show.
Yeah.
But when I was a teenager, I smoked a lot of pot. Mm-hmm. And, up until I guess probably around the time I was 20, 21 when I got married and we had a kid, and that was it.
And why'd you stop?
Well, we stopped because we had a child and I had a job and I was engaged in the economy, and it just didn't. I mean, there were actually years during my teenage years where I didn't smoke any, also because I was really into meditation and stuff. I mean, I went back and forth. But my point is that you smoke until you're high, and because you're inhaling it, it hits you quite quickly.
Right.
And so you self-regulate your dose. And so it wouldn't matter if it's 1% or 30%. I mean, if it was 1%, you might smoke an entire joint. If it's 30%, you might just take half a toke.
Right.
I don't see why that's a problem. If anything, that's just an economic problem.
Yeah. Look, I am very drawn to some libertarian arguments, and of course, the pot argument is squarely in the front and center of social dialogue right now. Shouldn't you be able to put something that's "quote unquote" non-harmful into your body that doesn't have any negative social cost,
or at least less harmful than alcohol?
Less harmful than alcohol. And I, number one, reject the fact that it's less harmful than alcohol, because certain alcohol, like wine, is shown to actually have helpful health effects.
Yeah, but you drink a bottle of wine and come driving over to my house.
Right.
The police will stop you on the way.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that.
If you use alcohol, for example, in a responsible way, take a glass of wine, and you use marijuana the way it's intended to be used, by smoking a joint, the person who drinks the glass of wine is not going to have any negative effects on society, a glass of wine. Whereas you smoke a joint today, as you just pointed out, with the 30% to 15% THC level, and you're going to have a hard time cognitively being able to do what you should.
Well, no, I think it's going to depend on how high you choose to get. Just like with alcohol, you can sit in a restaurant and drink 3-4 glasses of wine in a row, or just a half a glass. Or if you've got some pot, you can just take a very tiny toke and say, I just want to get a little bit of a buzz. Or you can just get wasted and say, I intend to just sit here and fall asleep.
Yeah. Well, the premise of your comment, and you're a great radio host, is that people will be responsible.
Well, I think most people are. I do think there is that 2 or 3% who are always going to be addicts and abusers with alcohol and pot. But at least with pot, they're not going to lose their livers.
Look, by legalizing pot, states like Colorado and others that have so-called medical marijuana, which it's not a medicine, and we can debate that if you want, they're sending a message not only to adults but to other people, young people in particular, that this is fine, it's okay to do, and
as a drug, and that's why we want to regulate it, make it available to adults. That adults can abuse drugs, adults can buy tobacco, which is an abusable drug. Adults can buy alcohol, adults can buy pot.
Yeah, and if you look at the percentage of arrestees, there's a very high percentage of arrestees who are arrested for other crimes who are dependent or have tested positive for marijuana. And that's a problem.